Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this particular podcast is a part one of two with Miss Erin Washington. She and I had a great conversation and I just didn't want to stop. And so it ended up being a little bit longer and I didn't want to bombard you guys with such a long podcast. So it is two parts. So this is part one. I hope that you enjoy. She's a fascinating lady where we talk about all things being female, wife, entrepreneur, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Melissa Made Show. So I have a great guest today. I've just now spent 10 minutes talking with her, and she's one of those people that I feel like I could grab a cup of coffee and talk with for hours. So she's a very fascinating lady. And I think so many of you women are going to be like, she needs to be my BFF. So let me introduce her, and then we're just going to dive in and just talk about stuff. I think, especially, which is going to be one of my questions, the women that she's been able to speak with are impressive. And so I'm kind of curious how those takeaways have been. So we're going to dive into that just a second, but I want to let you know that this really all started for her during the pandemic when she felt this calling to start doing lives on her Instagram and actually start connecting and making these, having these real conversations with women about their daily struggles. You know, we were all there being in lockdown with small children, how hard it was to maintain a workout schedule. You were there. I know that we talked about that lots and so much more. Now, these conversations led Erin to create her weekly podcast called Squats and Margaritas. See, you're going to love her, right? Conversations that help women feel seen and inspired to find their own purpose. And I love that. Some of her previous guests include the journalist Katie Couric, actress Melissa Joan Hart, and celebrity trainer Melissa Alcantara. And at the very beginning of her, or one of her pinned Instagram posts, which you'll have to go take a follow her, of course, is to just listen to this compilation of all of these great hosts or people that she has hosted on her podcast. And it's just, I got through half of it and she popped on. She's like, hey, that's me. That's my podcast. Like, this is fascinating. So I always want people to kind of start with their story and how they started with this. But since we're talking about specifically your podcast, can you just even wrap your brain around sharing with the audience just some of the takeaways that you've had talking with some of these amazing women like Melissa Alcantara? I mean, I just listening to her talk about eating, you know, and she's just beautiful, you know, personal trainer and her profoundness when it comes to just how people eat, you know, and she doesn't want to be the perfect little eater and stuff like that. Off the top of your head, do you have any moments that you're like, this will stick with me when talking with these just amazing women?
I think speaking with Kenya Moore, Real Housewives of Atlanta, if you're familiar with her, I mean, she grew up, she was Miss USA and in pageants. And usually I feel like Black women have just a stronger like self-confidence. I talk to, my kids are mixed. So I hope my daughter has some of that. And I always talk to Black women about how they get this confidence because I was always just, I needed to be a perfectionist and always like just tearing myself apart in the mirror and just nothing was ever good enough. And she was like, well, growing up in the pageants and everything, like usually like Black women were like a curvier girl. And she's like, I've never had a problem, but she never thought about it until she had her daughter. And she had her daughter very late in life. 47 was when she had her first kid. Yeah. And she said, I'm totally comfortable in my body, but she's like, I didn't even notice it. But every time before I get in the shower, I step on the scale. And she's like, it was just habit. And she said the other day she looked and her 3-year-old is on the scale, like looking at the numbers. And she was like, no, 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 like I am not going to start this with her. So it just brings me into what I always talk about. Like, it's not what you're saying to your kids. It's what you're modeling. And you can tell your daughter, you're so beautiful and strong and like, look at you. But if you're in the mirror, like, oh, I got to lose 5 pounds. I got to go on a diet. That's what she sees. She is like, you're modeling what a woman should do and be. So it's not just what you're saying to her, it's what you're modeling. And I think Kenya's saying that she'd always been confident, but now she's responsible for the next generation of girls. And this little girl is like, this is what we do. We stand on the scale. That's what mommy does. And I was like, that's such a great point. It doesn't matter what you're saying to them. They're watching what you do.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful. And I mean, it's such a young 3 years old. So we think,
Yep.
well, when they become teenagers, I'll get better about that and stuff like that. But you've got to start. I mean, the minute they're just literally their eyes are open and they're just really cohesive, it's the time for you to love yourself, which teaches them to love themselves for sure. So thank you. I'm going to absolutely dig into your podcast. I think it's going to speak to me. I would love for you, if you don't mind now, just to go back to where you just kind of share your story of what made you decide to specifically start this speaking live to people on Instagram, which human connection is everything, especially during those last few years, to have women that you find that you can talk to about struggles and stuff like that. So, I'm sure you were able to change a lot of lives during that time, and going from the Instagram lives to now having this podcast. How did that just click in your mind?
Well, for one, I will say I never in a million years thought that I would have a wellness platform or podcast. I struggled for 20 years with body image, every single eating disorder. I had them all. And just having no self-worth. Like, I never thought it was good enough. I met my husband when he was in the prime of his career in the NFL. And I always just felt like I didn't understand what he was doing with me, and he could have anybody that he wanted. So I was very like insecure and making sure he wasn't cheating on me, and just literally had no self-worth. And then when I was about 37, I kind of got it all together. I didn't have time to be in the gym all the time because I had 2 kids, like 2 small kids. And I started just listening to my hunger cues. And for 20 years, all I knew was restrict. Some points I was bulimic, so it was binge and then purge, but always calculating calories and macros. And if we went on vacation, the hotel had to have a gym, and I had to set an alarm and get up, before my family. And when I was living that way, I was 20 pounds heavier and living in a constant state of stress when all I wanted was my physical ideal. I never achieved it. When I just calmed the F down, started just eating when I was hungry, stopping when I was satisfied, and really wasn't working out 7 days a week, like never miss a day, I found my physical ideal. And I was like, I have to tell the woman who, first of all, is on the treadmill every day and shying away from weights and frustrated that she's exercising but not losing weight, the woman that's only eating salads, that is under eating and over exercising. There is a different way. Melissa, I don't feel like women have been, now they are, but they haven't been taught. Our whole life, it's calories in versus calories out. Just barely eat and exercise and you will lose weight. But you can get your body to a point where you don't lose weight anymore because you have totally messed up your metabolism like I did. So I'm like, I'm just going to share my story, help the woman working out and not losing weight. And I alluded to this, but with my eating disorders, but I hadn't told anyone. And I got a writing coach and I was like, I just want to help the women. I'm going to call it Squats and Margaritas, a journey to finding balance. And she's like, are you a nutritionist? And I was like, no. She's like, are you a trainer? I'm like, mm-mm. She's like, you don't have any credibility. Like, why would anyone listen to you? Like, you have these abs on the cover. And I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't always like, she's like, if there was a story of how you got to this place, you need to write it. And I pushed her back. Like, I was like, no way. Like, thank God I had stopped doing the behaviors, but nobody knew. And she kept pushing me. She's like, you have to tell your story. So what the book was going to be is the second half of what it became. It's like the program, exactly how I live with balance now, how I lost the weight, how I maintain it. But the first part is my story. And I'm so glad I shared it and was so vulnerable because, like you said, I've connected with so many women that are like me too. You're the first person that I've ever told I struggled with bulimia. Like, my husband doesn't know. So I decided, like, this is my purpose. It's like, I'm supposed to share my story to find purpose through what I've been through. And then my struggle wasn't in vain. as you mentioned, the world shut down and I had a 2 and a 4-year-old in the pandemic and started going live. Like, what in the hell am I supposed to do with these kids? There's no playgrounds. The schools are closed. Like, I couldn't get a workout in at the gym. I basically was like, what is everybody doing? Like, what are other moms doing? And they would write in the comments. The best one was like scavenger hunt. She's like, have them go out and find a stop sign, pine cone. It'll have them out all day. And they're like, pro tip, have them put something on there like a cow, something that they'll never find. So they're out there longer. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, this is so great. Pour a cocktail. And next week I'll go live again and we'll share best practices for momming in a pandemic. I started asking guests to go live with me, like some big mom bloggers. And they said yes, because it was the perfect time to ask them. They couldn't do anything else. It was COVID. Everybody was at home. Yep. I started asking some Real Housewives to go live and they said yes. And then I remember one of the times I looked, there were 5,000 people watching and I had just a small following. So obviously it was like the following of the guests that I was having on. And I would find myself like prepping for this little talk show. Like if I had a bigger guest, I was like, what am I going to talk to her about? Unbeknownst to me, Melissa, a program director at the biggest radio station in Washington, DC was watching me every week. And after one of my lives, she called and gave me my own show.
Wow. Meant to be.
So I never would have saw it coming. And I just say now, if you are feeling kind of itchy or restless, like maybe there's more, you don't have to know what it is yet. Just start putting yourself out into the world authentically and organically as you are. It wasn't an audition. If they said podcast one is having an audition for a new host, never would that have crossed my mind to do. But literally what was for me fell into my lap when I was just authentically being myself. And now the radio station produces it and promotes it on their stations, but I still like have say over who I want to talk to. And I find vulnerable guests that are going to go there. Like you mentioned, Katie Couric, she talked about her bulimia on my show. And for that one, like everyone was talking to her about her book and like how she went there about Matt Lauer and when she was doing our press, I found an interesting angle. And I was like, she mentioned bulimia and I was bulimic and I struggled for almost 10 years. And I booked her and she talked very openly about that. And then it ended up that I had the soundbite of Katie talking about something that she had never talked about before. And it just became a thing. And a tip for anyone that has a podcast is like, once you get someone in that genre, like a mom blogger, a Real Housewife, fitness, like if I want to book you or another fitness person, I say, here's a recent episode with Melissa Alcantara. Or if I want a Real Housewife, here's a recent episode. I had Teddy Mellencamp. And so you get their attention. And once you have that one, you leverage it to get other people in that like genre. And it just grew and became a thing. And it's my favorite thing I've ever done and never saw it coming.
So many takeaways from that. I'm kind of the same way that when I started my podcast, my marketing guy, Steve, said, I've never told anybody this. He said, who is your, like the biggest person you would want to interview? And number one, I struggled with that. I'm like, gosh, I don't know. And then I just kind of threw out The Rock. Yeah. Because I think he's funny as hell. Yeah. And he's so big into fitness, and I just find him so fascinating. And so I said The Rock, and he's like, okay, because let's reverse engineer that. And so, he's always trying to come up with guests that maybe know somebody that's worked with him to eventually, if you guys ever see The Rock on my, I've hit my pinnacle.
No, speak it into the universe. Cause you never know who's watching and be like, I actually know his sister, or I know you never know. Put it out there. Mine, Melissa, is Sarah Blakely. If anybody's listening, Spanx, like as a mompreneur, she had 4 kids and she sold it for billions. And I just want 30 minutes to just talk about branding. And I've made it to her people, but it's timing too. You just have to stay on it, keep putting it out into the universe. I'm a big manifester. Put it out. You never know who's listening and knows him, and you will book him. that would, I mean, if I don't shit myself, then that would be a great, so be it. You still had him on your podcast.
Yeah, that would be huge. But it is all about the story. You saying that, I think that we women, I have a few friends that I feel are, and mom of 2 myself. How are you say your kids are 2 years apart. Are they a little bit more than 2 years or a little bit less?
2.5.
All right. 2.5. Okay. Mine are 18 months apart.
Wow.
2 in diapers. My daughter was 2 months old and my son broke his leg when she was 2 months old. So I was carried them both forever. That was a hard time too. I didn't go through a pandemic. I can't imagine going through the pandemic, but the story of being a mom and all the things that we go through. But I notice a lot lately, and I want to say this very gently, that I have a lot of friends who lose themselves in their children, and
Yes.
being a partner or spouse, completely lose themselves, and their identity is that. And it's a
Yes.
big part of who you are, but it's not everything. With all the women that you spoke to and stuff, any advice
Oh
for
my God.
these ladies that are listening, that are, the only thing they identify with is what they do for their children and what they do for their spouse and their household, and there's nothing above and beyond that.
First of all, thank you for saying it out loud. I say it all the time. I said and I do speaking now. And when I'm talking, I'm like, you're a mom, but you feel like there's more, but you feel like you're not supposed to say it out loud because you're a mom and
Yeah.
your kids are your world. I get it. I always say, I'll say it out loud. I felt like there was more, and I have never felt so more aligned with why I'm on this planet than finding what I'm doing now. I talked to Katie Couric about this, and she like cut me off and was like, because I was like, how did you, like, you're the anchor of the Today Show. You had 2 young girls. Like, sometimes I just feel like they're only going to be little once. And my son's standing at the door. She like cuts me off and goes, oh, get over that. She's like, no. She goes, they're watching you. It's kind of like what you're talking about, Melissa, like modeling. They're watching you do good in the world. And she was saying that her daughter, like when she was 9, was like, Mom, they're standing in the kitchen. And she goes, Mom, I'm so proud of the work you're doing with colon cancer research. And she was like, you know what? Like, they're watching. And she's like, don't you want your daughter to have something she's passionate about? Like, stop
100%.
trying to make it. And then I have great advice from Melissa Bernstein. She is the founder of Melissa and Doug toys. Like, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So I talked to her. She had 6 kids and built like the toy brand. I'm saying the same thing. And she was like, no, she goes, I said, right now I'm talking to you. I have a little boy with curly hair kind of tapping on the window. And I'll always be like, hold on. What do you need to, and I'm like, Melissa, just to show him, like, he's the most important. This isn't, cuts me off again. She's like, no. You tell him mommy's work is just as important. And I was like, oh, it was such a reframe. And she's like, what mommy does is important and helps other people. She's like, you make them a part of it. Let them come in, like, let them sit at the microphone. And she was like, you do not dumb down what you're doing. Like, they are important, and what mommy does is important. She also said, if you're actually already a mompreneur and you're doing something now and you have kids, and I'm just like, I literally close my computer, I come out and I'm mom, then I come back and open it and I'm podcaster. She said, you need a transition time. And it doesn't matter if like you just walk to your mailbox and back, but she goes, there has to be a time where it's like mom Erin and career Erin has this little break. So you come back to your kids. She said that she used to take the train to New York. So when she would come back from the train, that was a transition time. She would walk in and be mommy. I was like walking out a door and I'm mommy, and I didn't have that time. So she's like, take a walk, do something for a transition so that you can kind of mentally shift, because it's very hard for me to turn it off. Like what I'm thinking about, and even I'm like physically with my kids, but admittedly, my mind is thinking about something else. And when you do your own brand, like I don't have a lot of help, and I don't delegate because I feel like I just micromanage everyone. So I'm thinking about something with my brand, but I'm with my kids and I'm like, be present. But if you have that transition time to kind of leave it and put it away, now you come back as mom. And I thought both of those tips, like model it, show them. And when you think about your daughter growing up, like, don't you want her to have something she is so passionate about and not feel unfulfilled? So you model that for her.
Yeah, that's powerful. I remember back in the day, always, because I've been trying to build my brand for, 20 plus years, but I remember thinking this to myself at one time, and then trying to share with other women out there that it's more important, in my humble opinion, to sit down on the floor with your child for 45 minutes of uninterrupted, it's you and me time, reading books, building blocks, than it is for you to be in the same room with them, present all day. Not really
100%.
just being in the room because that's what mom does. She's in the room. But if you can just give them, like, no matter how many children you have, I always made a point to give my son and my daughter individual attention every single day. And of course, time together, but for them to know that, mom has your attention right now and mom has your attention right now, how important that is. And it doesn't have to be an all day thing. It can just be little short bouts. Weight gain It can be so hard to avoid, especially when we're binge watching our favorite shows and getting invited to party after party. And it's frustrating when we're working really hard and everything seems to be going right, but yet that scale keeps creeping up and up. But I recently learned a really interesting fact about how weight gain works and the super simple ways that we can control it. So I was chatting with Tina Anderson. Now, she's the founder of Just Thrive Probiotics, and you definitely want to check out the podcast that we did together. It's really good. She told me that when it comes to fat burning, you and I are basically at the mercy of two specific hunger hormones. Now, stay with me. I promise this won't get too sciencey. Now, these hormones, which are controlled by your gut, are responsible for switching off your fat storing and switching on your fat burning. Interesting, right? So when your gut can properly parent these hormones, your body literally absorbs less fat from the food you eat and burns the excess fat that you have. Yes, please and thank you. But thanks to our modern toxic world, it's way too easy for these hormones to misbehave and to kind of run amok. So when this happens, we end up choosing foods that we know are bad for us. We're eating more foods, even when we're not hungry. And we're making bad food choices because we think that it just might possibly boost our down mood. Now, that's why it is so important to support the health of your gut so that you get these hormones under control. Now, thanks to Tina, my go-to gut support is Just Thrive Probiotic. If you've been following me, you know I'm obsessed with gut health. Up to 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. So a healthy gut is truly the master key to staying resilient and feeling your best. And with Just Thrive Probiotic, I feel confident that I'm giving my body what it needs to stay strong and balance my hunger hormones so I can avoid unwanted pounds. I trust Just Thrive because their probiotic has more clinical research than anything else out there. You hear that? I love that it's vegan, it's non-GMO, it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, and free from anything artificial. And it's even safe for kids. You can literally break open the capsule and sprinkle it onto any food or drink because Just Thrive strains are so resilient. They are all natural and do not even come alive until they get into your intestines. Now, seriously, I can mix it into smoothies or bake it into any recipe without losing the potency. Now, as a bonus, Just Thrive Probiotic can even support beautiful skin, better sleep, and a brighter mood. Just Thrive is my secret weapon for weight management. And right now, you can save 15% off their award-winning probiotic when you go to justthrivehealth.com and use the promo code MelissaMade at checkout.
Quality over quantity. Like they can tell if you're locked in or you're not. Like, I mean, I'm sitting down there and they're like, Mom, it's your turn. I'm like, huh? Like I struggle so much. I still have not found the balance of like shutting it off. Like, admittedly, I still, it's hard for me to be present. And I just think saying that out loud, like maybe another woman will feel seen and be like, oh my God, same. And you don't want to put the guilt that you feel like a bad mom because you're trying to juggle all the things. Like, it's fulfilling to have something for you. And when you have something for you, I feel like it makes you a better mom and a better spouse. Cause you're not like, I don't know, resentful. Like if your husband goes to work and you're just kind of like, your kids are at school and you're like, day, like you have something that you're passionate about and it makes you a better overall person, like spouse, mother, friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, question for you, and you may not have any, but it seems like I have a lot of, in my circle, I think a lot of very successful women, a lot of them have built their brands on social media and they share a lot of their lives and they deal with a lot of critics. And that's just a very nice way of me putting that. I'm trying to call them a very nice word, critic, when there's other words I would like to use. Do you deal with that, or because of the guests you've had by any means, have you ever had to deal with that personally? How do you absorb it? You know, maybe do you confront them? Do you ignore them? Do you have that issue?
I absolutely have that issue and I am not going to pretend that it doesn't bother me because I've seen women be like, oh, who cares? Like just delete. And it bothers
Block.
me. Yes. Block, restrict, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It used to really bother me. And it's the same thing. Like when you have like 90 comments and 89 are like, go girl. And you just see the one and you're like, that's the one you fixate on. Tiffany Jenkins, Juggling the Jenkins, like she's huge mom blogger. She was like, why are you giving attention to that one? And if you're going to respond, then every positive comment deserves a response. Because why are you giving this person more respect? And I'm like, oh, true. People come from my body a lot. Like I have super muscular legs because I played Division I soccer in college and I just have muscular legs. And there would be, I had a woman go, is that a man on one of them? And I left it. And then somebody else was like, definitely not the body type that I would ever want. And it bothered me. And I'm like, for someone to take to their keyboard to respond, you have triggered something in them that they are insecure about. Yeah. So what they are coming at you for, maybe this woman is trying so hard to build muscle. So she sees mine and is like, meh, like throw darts at it. So I have just kind of reframed it that if someone is taking the time to write a comment that's nasty, like they are struggling, and no happy person would write something like that and go after somebody else because you don't even have that thought. So now I overly, like completely kill them with kindness. And it's almost like it's so satisfying when I can like flip them. One recently, nothing about what we're talking about, but I have 2 young kids in elementary school and I posted something about the assault rifle ban. And some man like was like, you are the most, like, you're the stupidest woman. You have no idea what you're talking about. It was just very harsh. And I was like, totally get where you're coming from. But I wasn't mean. And like, it went comments, and my followers were coming for him. And he was like going at my other followers, and I would not say anything. I was like, totally hear that. I'm just saying this. And then by the end, he was like, and he wrote it in a comment to everyone. It wasn't like in a DM. He's like, thank you for being, I forget how exactly he said it, but like, thank you for being kind or straight with me when I was not that at all to you. And he's like, he kind of saw, he's like, just because he was triggered, and I get it. Like everybody has their triggers. He just went for me and I didn't take it. I was just like, oh, totally. Like, great point. Or that girl that said, definitely not the body I would ever want. I was like, totally get it. Have a great day. And like, other followers were like, what a classy response. Like, make them regret saying that to you because they're like, oh, she's actually nice. Like, so now it still bothers me, but I will just say something so nice back and try to like get them to be like, oh, because any person that has a thought to make fun of you or talk about your body is not comfortable in their own body. And it makes me almost feel like sorry for the person instead of being angry with them. No happy, content person would ever write something like that.
Yeah. And I do believe that by you showing your kindness, it's great for the people that matter to you to see how you handle that, because that could be a ripple effect as well. You sharing that, instead of saying something hateful or just deleting and letting them feel like they kind of, I showed them,
exactly.
talk to me.
Yeah.
You confront it and you share your honest feeling. My mom has always, taught me that you attract more bees with honey, 100%. But Erin, I think you'll appreciate this. I do have a switch though. that it just flashed in my mind when two little kids were bullying my son at like one of those McDonald's play places way back in the day when they had those. Yeah. And he came down crying and I climbed myself up that thing, nearly got stuck, pointed my finger at the little boys and told them, you don't talk, to other kids like that. That's not very nice. And said my piece, and then thought to myself, how the hell am I going to reverse myself out of this with dignity? Little boys are staring at me. And to be honest with you, people tell you I'm the nicest person on the planet, but I have gotten in a few fist fights. Yeah. But it's always defending somebody else. And so I have that it's more important for me to defend somebody else than even myself, as crazy as that sounds.
No, of course. I get that.
Yeah, good.
No, it doesn't sound crazy to me.
It does, when people do say things, I do the exact same thing you do. I'm like, okay, can I take it off myself and not think, and be wounded and think, gosh, I'm not good enough. My physique is not good enough. My education's not good enough, what it is, and think to myself, what is it, that they're going through. And that empathetic really helps, climbing up little kid structures that you don't fit in is another thing. But
I love that. I love that you did that. Then I tell you what, this is how I relate. Like it was a while that I'm 41 and I feel like this year I'm just like, screw it. And I will stand up for myself, but I didn't have that a couple of years ago.
Yes,
but my sister is married to a pretty big celebrity. Like their wedding was in People. And
oh, wow.
when things got posted and someone came for my sister, like,
oh yeah,
or her looks, like game on. I don't respond. And then we were in our hometown and he was with us and there was like, somebody recognized him. And there was like a girl, like almost knocking my sister down to like, go try to take a picture with him. And I was like, that's his wife. And like, he looked at me and he was like, calm down. I was like, no, she just pushed my sister out of the way. And I'm so not confrontational, but if someone comes for my sister, it's a whole different deal. I won't stand up for myself like that. Yeah. And something I also want to say really quick about the comments going back and forth. Like, let's be honest. We all want to grow our brands. The comments are engagement. So I'm like, come on, keep going. Let's get this to 200 comments. You are helping me. I even did a reel. I'm like, to the person that keeps like, and I'm responding to you and it'll keep going. That's more comments. You're helping my algorithm right now.
Yeah.
So don't delete, don't like respond, do whatever, like do a smiley emoji or just something to keep it going. Because honestly, that's what helps you. That post is now being shared because this person is being rude. Don't delete it. It's helping you.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. So kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, instead of talking about critics, do you find yourself ever playing the comparison game? I mean, when it comes to being a mom or being a podcaster or, now having, a health and wellness platform, do you play the comparison game? Is there, any advice that you have gone through or you have heard that has helped you with that? Because that, I mean, as much as having to deal with, it's like you said, you can get near 100 comments and it's the one that bothers you. But I think more often women wake up every single day with this, ideal in their mind or the comparison, especially on social media that they'll play and which makes them feel like they're not good enough.
So social media is not real. And once you accept that, I share this in my book. I literally saw this go down on a plane. This rail thin model was, I'm sure it was Facetune now, but this was like way before I had my kids, like say 10 years ago. She had this app and it was a picture of herself in a bikini and she's sitting in a row where nobody saw her. Like there's nobody with her. So she's not thinking anybody's watching, but I was watching through the crack in this seat and she's blowing up this picture. She is shaving off a little bit of her arm, a little bit of her leg. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going to post it. I'm watching this. She posts it. I remember it had 119,000 likes. Everybody's like, you're so gorgeous. And I'm fuming. And obviously the first thing is there is a 14-year-old girl that is watching this and seeing this come up on her feed and thinking, if I could just starve myself a little bit more, or if I just work out a little bit more, I could have this body. That is not her body. So you are comparing yourself to something that's not even real. Second part, Melissa, that's sad. This rail thin model was not confident enough to post a picture of her own real body. She had to tweak it in order to feel confident. So on both sides, I was like, this is the saddest thing ever. When I started out, I was more in the fitness space with my first book and I'm not a trainer and I was a Division I athlete, but my body isn't like a bodybuilder body. So I would get like, or I would share how I squeeze in workouts with 2 young kids and people would be like, that's not proper, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not a trainer. So it was like when I found my lane, which is just this balanced lifestyle, it's like trying to grow your brand and squeeze in a workout, spend time with your kids and relax with a margarita. It was like, it was less pressure to compare myself because this is me. I'm not fitness. I'm not this. Like there's nothing to compare yourself to when you're just your authentic self. This is unapologetically who I am. I was not there 10 years ago when I was so wrapped up in my body image and my noise, mental health noise of basically just, I couldn't lose weight and I felt like I was doing everything right. Once I got that figured out and that was off, it was like, I could just be my authentic self. And I say this too, it doesn't matter if you're not doing the behavior anymore. Like I was bulimic for 10 years. I talk about it very openly now because it's lost its power. You have to acknowledge it. And you don't even have to tell someone, like I obviously wrote a book. You don't have to write a book, but write it down because even if you're not doing it anymore, you're still carrying it if you've never told anyone. And like I said, it was like, thank God nobody found out about my bulimia. Now I'm just going to help the women and tell them what I do now. And I was still holding it. But as soon as I released it, it was like the next part of my life started. It was like, that's gone.
Yeah.
That shame is gone. And now I can like step into exactly what I'm supposed to do and like motivating other women. So get whatever if you're like triggered and comparing yourself, maybe you're still carrying something that you thought was over with. And maybe it's something that happened to you that wasn't even like your fault, or something that just from your past. And I can tell you, anyone that's listening to this, it's whatever you're thinking of right now. You're thinking of the thing. And if you haven't released it, please trust me. Like, I can't think of anything more shameful than be like, I used to eat until I would physically have to throw up my food. You don't want anybody to know that about you, but I say it now because I don't have any shame about it. And now it's like nothing else is on my shoulders. I feel lighter. And the comparison, I would say find your unique lane where no one else is doing exactly that. There's nothing to compare it to. Because I had all the imposter syndrome. People would be like, my publicist at the time was like, stop giving workouts. You're not a trainer. And I'm like, true, but I'm just showing, like, if your kid goes down for 20 minutes, like, this is what I do. And then I was like, okay. And then I would, what else? Eating disorder. Like, talked all about my eating disorder recovery, and the eating disorder community came for me and said, you're not a professional. You shouldn't be talking on it. And I'm like, so I was like, okay, I'm away from eating disorder. Everybody tries to kind of do what is working. And same with like the mom blogger space. Like, at the beginning, I would have my 2 kids. They would never be in a picture unless they were completely dressed so cute, and we'd be matching, because that's what mom bloggers that were doing it were doing. And if they had 1 million followers and their grid was so beautiful, I tried to just mimic what was working. Like, this is how you do mom blogging. I had no following. When I started just showing things, and I'll catch myself now, like, my kid's doing something so cute, but I'll take a video and I'm like, look at the playroom behind him. Like, there's no way I would have shared that before. I would have cleaned it all up, but that is real life. And when you just start sharing your authentic self, that's when I grew. You don't have to compare and try to do it what's working for somebody else, because that's not you. Once you find your authentic voice, you find your people who are there for you. And if you're being something that you're not, if you're like always filtered, or you're always, I don't know, I say this too, like, I know friends that are like not with their husband, but he's in pictures and they're trying to show this thing. And then I'm like, someone's going to run into you in Publix and be like, where's your husband? Like, just be you. Stop putting on any kind of facade. That is when you find your people. It's not about comparing to anybody else or doing it how this person does it. Just be authentically you. And then there's no, like, I don't have any shame about it. It's just who I am. You like me, you like me. If you like me because I have this contrived, like, perfectly manicured Instagram grid, that's not me. So any of those likes aren't validating, because that's not who I am. Now, if I get a like, I'm like, I don't have makeup on. I'm just being my absolute self. So it's more validating to get likes for your authentic self. I completely just went on a rant, but I'm very passionate about it.
I love it. And the quote of, you've got no one to compare to if you're authentically yourself is, that should be on a t-shirt. I think that's beautiful. And I started, I went to school for nutrition back in ASU day after graduating from high school. I've been in 50, 60 fitness videos. But my followers know this. I hid my feet. I have severe birth defects in my feet, and I was supposed to be wheelchair, but I was never supposed to walk. But I hid that in my story because it made me less than perfect. And fitness professionals are perfect. And I wasn't. And so, I was even we were in these, it was a program called PIO, which was Pilates and yoga.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I was bless Shalene Johnson, the creator. I was the only one that wore booties. Everybody else was barefoot, but she let me wear booties because she knew I was very uncomfortable with my feet. And I had terrible balance because they're pretty messed up. Bless her heart, let me in that program because she believed in me, which is just a whole other thing. But 5 years ago, I wrote a post. It's probably closer to 6 years now, about my feet, and and I'm hugging my knees and I'm sitting on a chair, and I told my whole story, and I turned off my social media. I clicked it and I turned it off, and I just could not stand to look. And people are like, I didn't even notice your feet until I started reading your comments, and they didn't even see what only thing that I saw. And I can't tell you, Erin, how freeing that was. Just like
you released the shame.
Oh my gosh.
And you probably made somebody else feel seen. That's like, oh my God, I have the exact same thing, but she is putting it out there. And that is why you do it, because releasing your shame is you're going to help someone else feel seen. And that's I love that you shared that story. Yes. And now it's like, whatever, like, it's out. You're not holding on to this thing. Well, what if you knew about this? You know everything about me. Like it just makes other people question like, wow, like, I mean, just this is how I was made. It's like, this is me unapologetically, and you don't have the shame of it anymore. And you can just move on with the rest of your life and not carry that. I love it.
Yeah. I have so many moms and a lot of grandmothers that message me because their children or grandchildren have, birth defects in their hands or their feet. And they're like, I've shared your account. And I'm like, that makes it all worth it. So
I love that.
For everybody out there, I think there's such a big world and it's growing so fast, and we're trying so hard to fit into a mold, and it's just so much more fun and relaxing and rewarding to let it all go and be who you are. And 95% of the people are going to love you, and there's going to be 5% that don't, but who cares?
Exactly. What's so hard. Like, I still care, I would just say, but it's like, you're not going to change them. Like they're not gonna, when I just said, I tried to flip them, I try, but it's like, my business coach used to say, there's like a certain amount of people that love you, that will buy anything you have. They're just love you. There are some people that will never. And then it's like, then the rest of the people, and that you just have to know who you're talking to. You're not going to, it's everybody. It's not nobody. Like the biggest celebrities have haters. Like you're not unique. Nobody is going to like, not everyone is going to like you. And once you just accept it, and it took me to get into my 40s to do that, because I wanted everyone to like me. And if one comment didn't like me, I would fixate on it. But it's like, I don't know, something happens in 40 or Gwyneth Paltrow. I was listening to her on a podcast, and she's like, it's almost like you get a software upgrade, like how your phone, she's like, when you turn 40, it's like, yes, like you're on a higher. And I was like, yes, it's like a software upgrade. And she's like, just so you know, it happens again at 50. You just get this, you feel like entitled. Like, you're like, yes, I belong here. But she's like, you don't have it in your 30s, but just know that at 40 and 50, you get like an upgrade, and you feel just more confident, and like what you deserve is different. And I felt that, like, I've just found this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely felt that at 40, and, I'd be 50 in February. So I'll be
you got another one coming.
My husband's already there. He's 50, and I've seen a huge shift in him I don't know if it's just the realization of that number, or just, but it's a very cool feeling. I was so insecure in my 20s. I was kind of secure in my 30s, but so secure of who I am in my 40s. So who knows what's going to happen here pretty soon.
Report back. I can't wait to see it.
All right, everybody, that concludes part 1 of my interview with Erin Washington. Please look forward to part 2 tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.